Welcome to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. Sure appreciate you being here, and if you like the video today, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Really excited about the Senate hearing today. I really thought it went well, and I thought I'd go ahead and tell you who the key players were, and also talked about what parts of it I liked and what parts of it I didn't like. Let's go ahead and start by talking about who the key players were. The chairman of this Senate committee was Senator Gillibrand, and then there was also Senator Ernst and Senator Rosen. It seemed like each one of them kind of had their little part to play if you watched it. Senator Gillibrand was very much about Arrow and UAPs and basically what Congress could do to help the witness, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who was the other key player in this drama that we saw today, what they could do to help him out to be able to make his job more successful. And so Senator Ernst seemed to be focusing primarily on the China-Russia threat, and so she wasn't so much about the UAPs in the sense of extraterrestrials. She was more on the idea of the threat from like I said, China and Russia. Now, it kind of bothered me a little bit, but I thought, you know what, maybe that's by design. Maybe the way this was approached is they each agreed, I'll take this, you take that, and then you take this. And so there were three of them that spoke, the three that I just mentioned, and so maybe that was part of it. Senator Rosen is from Nevada, and she talked about the safety of the military personnel in the institutions or installations in Nevada. And she wanted to make sure that Arrow was doing something to ensure their safety and talking about what they could do to help with that. But if you watched it, you know it lasted about an hour, and my suspicion is, I didn't hear this, but it looks like it started about an hour and a half late, which means that the closed-door hearing must have been a doozy if they ran over that much time, because it started about an hour and a half late and it ran for about an hour. Now, I will say this. I said this in my previous video. I thought we'd know a lot about how this meeting would go, this open hearing part, by looking at body language. And I think the closed-door hearing went very well. I really do. I think it went well. The body language seemed to be really positive. There was a lot of, from Senator Gillibrand in particular, a lot of kind of appreciating Dr. Kirkpatrick, recognizing who he is and how he has helped our country and the different jobs that he's had. And so I got the idea that things went pretty well. Now, let me give you some things that I liked about it. And the one thing I want you to understand is I haven't watched anybody else's response on this open hearing. And so what you're getting is just my raw emotions after watching it and taking notes. And so I took notes. I wrote down what I liked, what I didn't like, and I'll try it if I remember. Hopefully I'll remember. I'll give you the grade on how I thought it went. What I liked about it is that Dr. Kirkpatrick didn't seem to be afraid to use the word UAP. I know lately when I've been watching some of the stuff that's been coming out from the Air Force and stuff like that, it's like you can't hardly get them to say UAP. It's almost like they can't get the words out of their mouth. And so the first thing I liked is that it didn't seem like Dr. Kirkpatrick was worried at all about using the word UAP. The second thing I liked is he talked about the ET hypothesis. And I love the way he laid it out. He said basically they are looking under three sections. And the first section is kind of breakthrough technology from our adversaries, Russia, China. The middle section would be more the prosaic stuff like balloons and space junk and stuff like that. And then they have the ET hypothesis. And so I really liked the way that he put that together. And I'll say a little bit more about that in one of the other things I liked. But I like the fact that he actually used the word extraterrestrial. Number three, he said that they were looking back at the historical record of UAP related to military investigations, not necessarily the civilian ones. but they were going to look back at the military investigations. And that was one of the things that we did not like about the first hearing is it just seemed like Moultrie and Bray, they didn't have a clue about the history of this subject, even within the military, because there was one instance, I remember it was Maelstrom or which one, or but one of them where they should have known it, and they didn't seem to have any information at all. So I like that. I like the fact that they're not just going from this day forward, but they're going to go back. And what I think I heard was they were going to go back, not in this open hearing, but I think I heard in the past that they were going to go back all the way to 1945. And so I thought that was really, really important, that they're not just looking at when they started, 9 months ago when the Aero office was established, that they didn't just say, okay, we're going to go from here forward. What they're doing is they're going all the way back probably to 1945, and I like that. The other thing I liked is that he gave us a number. When Senator Gillibrand asked how many cases they have looked at or are looking at, basically he said there's 650 cases so far. And out of those 650 cases, 325 of them are still under the category of unresolved. And one of the things I liked about the way he did that is he very much clarified what it meant to be unresolved. He said basically that unresolved does not mean it's extraterrestrial. It just means that we don't have the answer yet. We don't have the data to make a decision or determination on what this is. And I think that's something that for those of us watching on UAP Twitter, we need to remember that just because it's unresolved doesn't mean it's ET. And I thought he was very, very fair on that. He mentioned, another thing he mentioned that I liked is he mentioned that a few demonstrated signatures that can be called anomalous. He talked about a handful of them, and I don't think that anybody should get upset over that. Because if you listen to George Knapp, if you even go back and listen to guys in the 50s and 60s that were talking about it, there's been a pretty common agreement that about 95% of what people call UFOs or UAPs are prosaic, they're hoaxes, or they're just simply misidentifications. But it's the 5%. It's the other 5% that is fascinating. And I really appreciated the fact that he seemed to acknowledge that 5% as well. Now, one of the other things, I think there are two highlights of it, and I'll get one of them here, and I'll get the other one in something that I didn't like. One of the highlights of this whole meeting was the Mosul orb. I mean, we've seen Jeremy Corbell's version of it, and something that was leaked to him. I guess it's now declassified, but we got a really, really good, clear view of the Mosul orb. And I also like the fact that he showed us the difference between what they would say is unresolved, like the Mosul orb, and then this other one, which was supposed to be the engine from a jet. And he didn't explain it well enough for me to say, yeah, okay, I accept that it's an engine, because I go, well, maybe it only has one, but most jets have two engines. And so that one kind of didn't seem as convincing to me, but I understood what he's trying to do. He's trying to say, we're being fair here. We're going to come out and we're going to say, here's one we don't know what it is. This is a perfect example of it's unresolved. We don't know what this is. And this one, we put it through test, we've looked at it, we've come to the conclusion that it is a jet engine. And like I said, even though I don't have enough information to agree with that being a jet engine, at least he didn't present enough to convince me that's what it was. I liked what he did. I liked what he said. He says, you know what? Instead of just writing everything off, he tried to show us some balance. And so I really like that. The other thing another thing I liked, is that he said, and this is to quote him, that he would not close a case he could not defend the conclusion of. And so I could be wrong. Maybe we got the biggest snow job in the world, but I liked what he said. Now, it may or may not be true, and I hope it is. But I really liked what he said. And the other thing that, as he described the way that they were managing this with the charts and stuff, and the way he articulated it, it sounds like it's a very solid process that they have in place, if it's true. I mean, I'll tell you what, the way he described it, this hearing versus the one we got Moultrie and Bray, I mean, these are night and day. And I don't know much about Kirkpatrick. I had some reservations, but the way he presented himself, the way he presented the evidence, he didn't seem hostile. He didn't seem like he was hiding anything. But I thought he did a good job of trying to explain it. Now, the other thing I liked from this open hearing is we've heard that there's 3, 4, maybe more whistleblowers that have come forward. And I suspected it was more. If you watch my last video, you'll hear me say those exact words. Well, it definitely was more. And so far, they have 24 witnesses that the Congress has referred to Errol. And he actually asked for more witnesses, but he said to prioritize them because they only have so many people to do it. And the other thing I liked, which isn't on my list, is the fact that they're trying to get more funding. They're trying to get more authority for that office to be able to get the information that they need. But those are the things that I liked. And so those are, in a sense, more than what I expected. I didn't expect much, if you noticed from my last video, because when we saw the House open hearing, we didn't get much. And so it was natural to assume that we weren't going to get much. Now, let me make this clear. We didn't really get anything new. But if you thought we were going to get anything new, I think you were misinformed. Because this was an open hearing. They're not going to put out national security secrets in an open hearing. And so if your expectations were for them to acknowledge that we got crash retrieval, that they're doing reverse engineering, your expectations were wrong. Because that will never happen in an open hearing, at least at this stage in the game. And so I'm hoping that's not what you expected. But we didn't get anything new, but I'll tell you what we did get: a better understanding of the process, a better understanding of who's involved. I loved his red team and blue team analogy, where he talked about on one side there's the Intel people that are retired or former Intel people. Then you've got scientists and engineers over here, and basically both of them get to look at the same case. And if they disagree, he said they would adjudicate it, and they would come together and try to figure out why this group liked it and this group didn't, or why this group made this decision and this group made something completely different. And then after that, it would go to a whole nother group of people outside of both of these groups to make a final decision on. So like I said, I thought the process was really, really good. Now, let me get to the part that some of you are probably going to get excited about. What was it I didn't like about it? What I didn't like was the way Dr. Kirkpatrick started off the information that he was given, his statement that he read. Is he started off by talking about Carl Sagan and his famous quote, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." And what I didn't like is, I don't like that one anyway. I just think extraordinary claims require evidence. I mean, proof is proof. But what I didn't like is it seems like he raised the bar. And he quoted Carl Sagan, and then he said, but I'm going to take it a step further, that it needs extraordinary scientific evidence. And I'm just going, and I'll get to this in a second, it's like, he's raised the bar. He's raised the bar to what's going to be acceptable before you can call something extraterrestrial or non-human intelligent, NHI. And I didn't like that. That seems to be what the debunkers do. They make the bar so high that the only way that they're going to be convinced that there are extraterrestrials or NHI is if you land a spaceship on the White House lawn, or if you bring an alien body in. And so nothing else will satisfy them except for those things. And the bar's way, way too high. Now that can happen someday, but I'm going to tell you something. I believe it's intentional. I believe ET's just monitoring us. I don't think we're ready until we get past this violence that we're perpetrating on one another and become a civilization that is mature. I really don't think that they're going to have open dialogue with us until we evolve to that state. And so I think they're observing us. I think they're watching us. And I think they're waiting. And so don't expect a flying saucer to land on the White House lawn. Don't expect an alien body to be found, because if it is found, you know where it's going to go. It's going to go to Area 51, Area 52, or wherever the latest place they're hiding that, or some contractor's location, or where they have their facility, where it's outside of the oversight of Congress as well. Now, another thing I didn't like, and you probably didn't either, he said that there was no evidence of extraterrestrial tech. And my problem with that is he never said that about Russia or China or adversarial tech. It's like, I get what he's saying. We have nothing to conclusively say 100% that it's ET. But by the same token, he said there were no markings on these objects identifying them as Russia and China. They didn't have a flag on them. And so why didn't, if he's going to be fair, if this wasn't kind of tipping his hat a little bit about maybe a bias he has, is why didn't he say that about Russia and China? Why couldn't he? Why didn't he say, well, you know what? We have no evidence this is Russia and China. We have no evidence this is ET. That would have been fair. But the fact that he singled that out, it's almost like that was an agenda. And maybe in his defense is that there are people that are just scared to death in government for him to use the word extraterrestrial. And so maybe that was his out, that he made that statement. But the other question I had about that is, I don't know how honest that answer is. And the reason I say that's a little deceptive, I think, in a sense, is that if Arrow has listened to 24 whistleblowers talking about things like reverse engineering and crash retrieval and these programs that are hidden, isn't that pointing to evidence? And so to make a blanket statement, there is no evidence, without qualifying it, but we're looking into it, to me kind of, I think, shows a little bit of a bias there. And like I said, maybe it was by design, but I had a problem with that. The other thing I had a problem with, and I think a lot of us were expecting this, is that the 3 objects that were shot down a couple months ago were not brought up. They were not brought up by Senator Gillibrand. They were not brought up by Senator Ernst. And they were not brought up by Senator Rosen. And so you go, oh man, that's like the elephant in the room. Are you hearing me today? That's like the elephant in the room. I mean, everybody was waiting to get some kind of information. Why there is no crash retrieval? Why is it just the silence is deafening on this? And so it was the elephant in the room. And the only conclusion I could come up with, it's just me, is that was probably covered, excuse me, in the closed hearing. That was probably discussed in the closed hearing, and it's classified. And so I'm thinking that they probably talked about it in the closed hearing and didn't feel the need to bring it up in the open hearing, probably because it had national security implications. And one of the theories that I've wondered about, and like I said, it's just a theory, is maybe those 3 objects were Russian. And we don't want them to know that we know their capabilities. And so we're going to pretend like, oh, we just shot them down. There's nothing to see here. And they got obliterated, and there's nothing to see. It's gone. So China, you don't have to worry. We didn't really get your tech, but maybe behind the scenes we are going and taking a close look at it, and we simply don't want China to know that we know as well. Now, there was another thing that I think was a highlight of this hearing, and if you watched it, I'm sure you caught on to it, is when Senator Gillibrand was asking Dr. Kirkpatrick about who he was supposed to answer to, who he was to report to, and man, that got really awkward. I mean, you can see when Kirkpatrick stops his conversation, when he stops with his last word, he's like, his eyes communicate a ton. It communicates that things aren't going well there. He was supposed to, if I remember right, report to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and he was going to a different group, which is the USDINS, and they're trying to figure out how this is all supposed to go, but it's not going well. And I wondered when I heard that if this isn't Lou 2.0. Because if you've listened to Lou Elizondo, the reason he resigned from ATIP was because he could not get the information to the people who needed to hear it. In this case, it was General Mad Dog Mattis. And so out of frustration, Lou resigned, figured he'd get more done outside than inside the government. And so I'm wondering, I'm telling you, go back and watch that. Go back and watch when they were talking about that very subject, and watch when he ends his last word. You can look at his eyes. I'm not kidding you. Do this, and you'll see that there's something not right. And then Senator Gillibrand follows up on that and talks about it. So there's obviously a frustration going on there. Doesn't sound like the information is still getting to where it needs to go. And so that's why I call it Lou 2.0. The other thing I was disappointed in, but not surprised, is that we really didn't learn anything new. I mentioned that already. The only thing new that we really got out of this meeting was the better pictures of the Mosul orb. That was really the only new thing we got. We got a better understanding, and I appreciated it, of how the process works. I mean, I'll tell you what, this hearing, in my opinion, this is my raw opinion, I haven't heard anybody else talk about it, is that this hearing was much, much better than the one we had in the House. If I was to give it a grade, I would give a B for presentation, and I'd probably given that that I wasn't expecting a lot, I would give it a C as far as what we got out of the meeting, because I think it was valuable to be able to see the Mosul orb. I thought that was amazing. I thought the clarity of it was, and we've been wanting that. You know, Lou mentioned in the last hearing they had that they had much, much better videos, and I'm sure they probably have better than the Mosul orb, but I'm telling you what, that was better than what we've seen of it up to date, of what Jeremy showed us and what other people have put those out there. This was a much better video. And so, I'll give them a C for that part. So if you ask me about how I feel about this hearing, I think it went about as well as it could have went. Because like I said, you cannot expect them to go out and just spill their beans, give us all this classified information. And so the expectation for this hearing, as I said before, we shouldn't get it too high, because there's only so much that they're going to be able to reveal. What I'm excited about, by the way, is what's going to happen in the next 6 months. In the next 6 months, Gary Nolan has told us that people are going to come forward, and I like Gary Nolan a lot. He's a professor at Stanford, and I really don't think he says things without having knowledge that they're actually going to happen. And so there are going to be some people that are going to come and speak. And so I told you guys already in my last video, don't get too excited about this hearing. Get excited about what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But this hearing definitely went better than I expected. And I'd have to say better than most people expected. I'm going to be doing another video. I don't know if I'll get it done today or not, but I'm going to start the series that I mentioned. I'm going to be talking about UFO events. And I've got an event that no one's ever heard of before. I think there are probably thousands of them, tens of thousands of stories like this out there. But this is from somebody who's a really, really good friend of mine. And to be honest with you, the reason I'm here doing what I do, the reason I'm on UAP Twitter, is because of this person's testimony. And so I'm going to put that together as well. And I'll try to get it out today. If I don't get it out today, I'll get it out tomorrow. Thank you for watching. And once again, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. Have a wonderful day. Bye.